Welcome to another episode of the Alley Report. Today we're talking Scott Moses, author of Hunger Pangs and Our Own Unique Affliction. Thanks for coming on here.
Hey, Elford. Yeah, thanks for having me again. I'm a bit sick, so if I'm a little slow or disjointed. Apologies in advance, but happy to be here.
Yeah. I guess let's start with what are you reading right now that's like fascinating you?
Ironically enough, and I didn't plan this, but I actually just finished your apartment 239
Oh,
just 3 days ago, and
oh, nice.
re yeah, really into the story. A really effective prologue. Actually, that was maybe my favorite part. Just the hook. It's like how can you not read after reading that prologue? So yeah,
Yeah.
totally weird timing, but I would definitely say that for sure. And
Oh, thank you.
let's see. Yeah, of course, man. I mean, it was great. It's bad when you have to pull up like what you're currently reading. That's kind of a interesting. Oh, how could I forget? I just finished Keith Rawson's Smoke City as well. If you're familiar with,
Oh, I
uh,
haven't read that yet.
oh really? Are you familiar with Fever House or?
That one's been on my list for a while. I have the ebook. I just haven't started it yet. I'm always
I
like
highly
10 books books going.
No, I understand. But yeah, that one is just a wildfire. I highly recommend Fever House as well. That thing is incredible.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Um,
How about you? What are you reading right now?
um, right now I actually have a Jonathan Duckworth he's written a novel that he's kind of sending places, and I have just started it.
Oh,
Really
cool.
enjoying it. Also reading. I have my ebook and I have my stack by the bed, so I have been reading Indigenous Continent, which is fantastic
Nice.
so far. Um, and my another non-horror. You know, every now and then I do that.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's healthy. Read from every genre and just bring it back to your own writing.
Absolutely. Like sometimes the inspiration for the really scary stuff will come from like a history book or things like that. The unexpected
Exactly.
places.
I agree, I agree. Elsewise, it's just kind of like an echo chamber almost. You almost have to bring
Yeah.
in outside things. Yeah, I
Yeah. And
agree.
I mean, and honestly, you look at what anyone who's, become like an author who like people really into or has hit it big, they will always read way outside their genre or usually right outside the genre too.
Yeah, read well and often. I think I can't even remember who said that. Maybe Stephen King or could be anyone,
That's,
but it's
that seems like
pretty
a
good advice.
thing. Um, yeah, I think the first thing of yours I read was your collection Hunger Pangs, which was
Oh,
so good. Um,
oh, really? Oh, cool. I always hesitate to go back and read it because it's been so long, but I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean the title story, Hunger Pangs, ended up being the first chapter in Our Own Unique Affliction. So,
I love
sometimes
that
the
when
story has legs.
yeah. Um, yeah, there's sometimes I had to go back and reread some older stories of mine when they got picked up by a publisher and I was gonna revamp them, and it was that thing of like sometimes I was like, I could do this better, and then every now and then be like, well, hey, look, I might have been onto something here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that collection, and I don't think I'm alone in this, but I think it's honestly just almost like an outline for certain novels that I want to write, just expanding certain short stories. Have you ever done that? Like taking a short story and kind of expand it into a longer
Yeah,
work?
yeah.
Yeah.
I've done that a few times. I have a couple stories that somebody pointed out like this really feels like the first chapter of something longer, and you should go do that. But then those are the ones where I'm like, I don't know, I feel like I did it all. I feel like I got it all done. But yeah, sometimes that
I've,
short story is almost like the rough draft of like the bigger work to come or the better work to come.
mhm. Or the chapter one, like who knows?
Yeah.
I thought that story was done. And to your point, Eric Raglan, and I think Ross Jeffrey said essentially what you just said, like, hey, I'd like to see where this story goes. And I was like, I don't know. I figured it was done, but who knows?
Yeah. But I mean, it became our own unique affliction, which I mean, that book's done really well.
I'm extremely grateful. I don't really know how. I'm just grateful for everyone who's read it. Yeah, wrote it during a very bad time in a very dark room, but I'm glad people are resonating with it.
Yeah. And sometimes, you pour your own trauma and suffering out onto the page. I think people kind of pick up on that almost. It's kind of like, oh, it's not just me who's dealing with these things. And we should mask them with vampires and monsters, but it's usually just the things that are like haunting us.
Exactly. I can't remember who said it, but there's the reason I think one reason why horror is so great is it's almost like looking in a mirror, but really looking at something behind you, like big things like death or like, loss. You can write it. It's like, oh, I'll throw a vampire in there, but I would honestly just be talking about death with this person, but this is maybe a more palatable way to do it.
Yeah,
So long live horror.
absolutely. And uh, there's also like seeing vampires continue on. Like I feel like there's certain monsters, certain creatures. People always talk about them as in phase. Like vampires are in now. It's like, well, I think they've always been in. They've been consistently in for 300 years now.
Exactly. There's a reason we can't stop talking about him.
Yeah, there's
Immortality
always
is my opinion, but
yeah, there's always something like there's your novel. There's I loved Andy Davidson's vampire novel, and I'm blanking on the name. And I feel bad about that.
it's a
Um,
Western, right?
yeah, well,
Gosh,
it's not.
sort of.
It's set in Texas, so it's sort of like, and I think it's set in
I
the
read it years ago
'70s.
too, but
But it's
I feel
yeah,
bad
it's
now
so
too. I've read it. I've read it though. It's been years, but I've read it. Yeah, that's a great one.
yeah, and then seeing like books like Mongrels, it's like deal with werewolves. Like you can always bring these back. You can always bring these monsters back. There's always dressing you can add to them.
That's probably one of my all-time just favorite books of ever is Mongrels. Stephen Graham Jones. I mean, everything he touches is gold, but that book just has a special place in my heart, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it's like, and to me, to what always is that dividing line between what's good horror and what's great horror is if it breaks my heart a little bit. I feel like the best always just like, and there's a specific moment near the end of it where it's like, oh, that's shattering. This is great. This is great horror.
I
I
agree.
agree.
Loss, melancholia, longing, that's real life. So I think that's why it
Yeah,
hits harder personally.
yeah, and yeah, it's one of those things like it's almost gotten to the point where it's rare to truly scare me or creep me out. So it's like now it's like I look for the stuff. It's like, well, you can emotionally devastate me. That's still open.
Exactly, exactly. Um, Especially like with things of loss, if a character loses someone as opposed to dying, I think that kind of hits me a bit
Yeah,
harder too. In a lot of horror, dying is almost a respite. Your
yeah,
suffering is over, but you have to live with having lost someone. That's the real kicker right there.
yeah. That's why a lot of like in horror films, you have the triumphant moment with the final girl, the survivor, and it's like the horror for them just began. Like they haven't
Exactly.
processed what they went through. This is just the beginning. Their real
Exactly. A
terror is to come.
lot of therapy, dear God.
Oh yeah. Um, oh, in addition to you know, writing short collections and novels, you also edited an anthology. What one wouldn't do.
I did. That was a bucket list item, and I do not regret it. I do not regret it whatsoever. It was fun, but any chance like the thought crosses my mind to do another, I'm like, no, we're good, we're good. I didn't write for 6 months, and like it was extremely fun, like curating the stories, and everyone brought like such great stories, and I even had to like thicken the anthology because I just didn't have the heart to just reject all these amazing stories, and it could have been twice as long, 3 times as long, but it was so much work, which is fine, but like I'm a writer, not really an editor. It just was
Yeah.
like trying to check a box off, but yeah, it's a good time. I'd recommend everybody maybe try it once, and you'll know if it's for you or not.
I mean, the second I mentioned it, you immediately just like physically like
Yeah, it was a weird time in my life, honestly. Not to get like too personal, but what the hell, might as well be honest. I was pretty vitamin deficient editing that anthology, so I was like, I'd get home from the office around 6, read stories until about 1, and just did that for like 3 or 4 weeks. I'd given myself a few months to select the stories, and I read everything and selected all the stories in 11 days, which is not healthy at all whatsoever. And then I was dealing with like some undiagnosed kind of like OCD stuff, which is on the level now, but I didn't even know what was going on then. So it's just like a perfect cocktail of like good times. But I'm glad the book is out, and I do not regret it at all. Just a weird time in my life.
yeah. I mean, I think I remember you talking about like you having posts. It's like, if you're if you just feel like you're in a hole, like vitamin D, like
Honestly, changed my life. Who would have thought that the sun,
yeah, that we
we need
needed.
it. We need it to live, especially after like a global pandemic where you're stuck inside. Like, who would have thought? It's
Yeah.
crazy.
I swear for a little while that became my, how when people are like, I don't feel good, I have a headache, and there's always persons like, have you drank any water? Water? I feel like after reading your stuff, I became like have you been in the sun? Like, like there's,
Yeah, spread that gospel, man. It really helped me. We all need it, that's for sure. Dear
um,
God.
yeah, but yeah, that anthology, like if anybody watching hasn't read it, what one wouldn't do is a fantastic one, but it is one of those like is the best bad vibes. Like there's just like crushing stories in that. It's fantastic though. Like everything in there, like you chose the best.
I mean, just they were all so good. Like just the ones that made the book obviously really resonated with me, but it's not to say like hundreds others didn't either. Just that might be one of the reasons alone I might not ever do another because just narrowing it down is so damn hard. Like like I know what it's like to be rejected. I've actually been getting agent rejections all week, so I understand it's like sucks. But actually dishing those out, I don't know if it's for me or not.
That's why I would have.
But
I would just go broke. It would be a 700-page anthology. Like so, I'd just be like, I can't do it.
no, I understand. I mean, we had the stimulus money back then, and I was uh, fortunate enough to have roommates, so I just kept using more of that to increase the book, and I guess it worked out okay.
Yeah, I mean it's a great
Excuse
anthology.
me.
It's hard for me to imagine what would be cut from it. Like when I think about the story stuff, it's like I don't know what would be the one that I would say no to. Like
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love all of those stories, but I remember um, when I first sat down to read Slush, like first day, first story ever was J.W. McCarthy's oh gosh, I'm gonna forget the title now. With Animals. And
oh
that to this day is still one of my favorite short stories, just period. Uh gosh, I think about that story probably weekly, and she knows it, but whew, not trying to sell my own anthology here or whatever, but like gosh, if you can find that story somewhere.
yeah, or just anything by J.W. McCarthy. Like anything I've read of hers in other anthologies, always the one that's like, well, shit. Like when you get to the end of it, like
Oh, definitely. She has a way with words and her voice is
Mhm.
incredible. We kind of joke around that have you read Sleep Alone? Her kind of punk rock novella,
I haven't read that one
Succubi.
yet.
Uh, I highly recommend that one. I think it actually, if it didn't win it, I know it was nominated for the Shirley Jackson, I think maybe this year or last year. I have no idea what day or year it is currently, but I highly recommend that one. We kind of joke that that is in the same universe as Our Own Unique Affliction. Like her character and mine could be drinking in the same bars, but they just have their own things going on. I don't know. I love Jen. She's great. I consider her a writing sibling of mine, if we're just being frank. She's
I
great.
feel like I feel like there should be a crossover because are you ever going to revisit the Our Own Unique Affliction world?
How much to say? Not Hmm. Not directly, but the novel I'm currently drafting, without spilling too many beans, I guess it doesn't really matter. I think Alice Ann, you may or may not see her a few years prior to the novella, where she was definitely a different person. Maybe not though. I might just cut all that stuff, but it's been fun to write. I don't know. I don't know. I got nothing. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I kind of like sequel prequel things where it's not the direct continuation like you would imagine. You're in that world, you might see characters, but it's going to go in a totally different way. Like um, Kyle Winkler's The Nothing That Is, his like Cosmic Horror novella. He has the sequel coming out called Tonebone, and I got
Hmm.
to read arc of it,
Oh,
and
nice.
it's like that. It's that world, but you're going to take a different offshoot in a different direction, and I know it's 10 times better. Like I love that book.
Yeah, man. I love Kyle as well. I've not gotten around to reading that book yet, and everyone is just like, you would love this book. Just read it out, but for years. But like your TBR is so heavy, it's like your nightstand's buckling at the legs.
Yeah,
I need to. I wish I could read faster. I'm such a slow reader, but I've heard it's amazing, and he's such a good person. So
yeah. I would say of all the stuff so far, Grass Hands has been my favorite. Like that's
Is that the post-apocalyptic one? Or am
um
I mis
yeah, or are you thinking of there's this one is kind of sorta. I think Boris
okay.
Says the Words was the more
That's the
post-apocalyptic
one.
one.
I
And
I
also
have
love it.
I have that one. I'm just like I'm such a slow reader. I'm like, oh, I'll do something shorter first. And then like a year goes by and I'm like, oh, I've only read novellas this year. That's not good. But
Oh, I went to my
the premise
my
sounds great.
Amazon, yeah, my Amazon like wish list where I keep all list of books I want to get or stuff. And some have been on there so long they're out of print. Like they just
Oh,
sat on that list for so long I can't buy them anymore.
oh
Like
gosh.
yeah, I need
I'm
to
sorry
check
for
on
your
this list
loss.
more often.
No,
Like
likewise. That's rough. Too many books.
yeah, like there's just not enough time.
Mm-mm. That's what makes life beautiful. Live in the present moment. You can't read
Yep,
them all.
can't read them all. It could all end any moment. Maybe aliens, maybe meteor. We know, who knows?
Oh gosh. Probably each other. We'll see. I don't know. No, I'm
That'd be
optimistic.
great.
I'm optimistic. Oh gosh. I think we're our own worst enemy, right? Is that a cliche
Yeah,
to say? But happy
yeah.
to be
No, I
alive
think
though.
yeah. It would also aliens would almost be nicer because like we didn't destroy ourselves. Someone
Yeah,
else
it's
did
like
it. We're
some
blameless.
like some like aliens somewhere be like they'd be losing so much money betting on like us destroying ourselves, and then it's just something completely different. That'd be kind of hilarious.
Dang it.
Yeah.
Um. Well, you said you're working on something new. Like when you're writing, do you do the thing where you're gonna have your hyper focus on whatever you're working on right now, like the one work, or do you jump between things?
I do have to kind of commit myself to one, which has been a skill I've been trying to build because for a while there I was writing mostly short fiction, novelettes, and novellas. The last 2 years it's been novels. So as you know, obviously, of course, like you get ideas all the time, but you can't write them all. Like
Yeah.
there's too many. So it's so tempting to like start something new. So a bit of a loophole I've been doing is when I'm in the thick of one novel, I will jot down ideas and like dialogue and things for other, but I will never like sit down to write it because then I don't think I would finish anything. Um, I've written a few novels, but the one I'm querying one now, which took about a year to really get to that point, and I've almost been working on this current one for about the same. So I'm finding it takes me a lot longer to really complete a novel. So I digress, but I really have to stick with it and be
Yeah.
disciplined, or I'd have like chapter ones of 18 different things. I don't know if you could relate, or can you do
Oh
things
yeah.
simultaneously, or
I well like I work from home and stay at home dad kind of thing. So until my kids are both in school now, but there'd be times where it's like I wouldn't get a day to write, for for weeks. And one time, like my wife took the kids to visit her grandma, and like I had a whole day, so I wrote like 5 chapter 1s of it, just like I'm gonna get as much as I can down. And for like 2 years, it was just like hopping between all of them. But it was kind of
mm,
funny. Some of them just kind of died off, and I've completed one of them, and another one I'm about halfway now. But um, like
it's
when
pretty
you write,
incredible.
yeah, it's like I
That's pretty
just
incredible, actually, to be able to do that. Like, I can't even wrap my head around. I don't think I could do that. That's great.
well, I didn't do it well. I eventually had to like
Oh,
be like get to a point where it's like, okay, okay, it's this one until I finish it, and then, um, but I do you when you write your work, do you do the thing where it's like you got to finish the draft? It doesn't matter if there's placeholder or this will happen at this point. You got to get to the end, or do you edit as you go?
yeah. Honestly, I've been asked that before, and I have to go chronologically. Because obviously, when you start a big project or even a short story, there's that scene you are like dying to write, and I
Hmm.
almost use that as like the carrot. Not that you want everything else to suck or be boring, but like there's like these carrots along the way. It's like, I've been waiting to write this for like a year. So
Yeah,
I kind of do it chronologically. And that's just the way, like, I know you've probably heard the expression, like, you got to fill at least in my opinion, you have to fill the sandbox and then you can start making the castles. Like, I just have to
yeah,
write it in a linear way to tell myself, a vague idea of this malformed thing that is supposed to be a story. And then, I don't know, I just need the linear uh, trajectory, I guess. I know a lot of writers that will write their favorite thing first, and then they come back and they're like, "Oh, I have to write the soggy middle now. This is terrible," Like so. I don't know. I don't think either way is right, but I don't think I could do it the other way just because, know thyself, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, because I've definitely done a thing where I skip around on one where it basically, like what you said, right? The parts that you're excited about. And really, I had these filler, almost like filler chapters where it's like, okay, I got like four plot points I got to knock out in this thing. And I feel like it made the story less. Like I really had to go back and change my approach because then it became like I compare it to Attack of the Clones in Star Wars, where it was like, okay, this you had a bunch of plot points you had to get to set up episode three, and you just kind of threw them all together, and you can
I hear
tell.
you. Yeah, I hear you. And I think at least for me personally, like coming off from where you left off, there's like an emotional kind of what is the word? Almost I don't know what the word I'm even looking for. Like a wave, and it's almost like a
Yeah,
song, the intro, verse, chorus, like it kind of flows. And I feel like if you build off of where you left off, maybe it does some of that cohesion, hopefully, on its own. I don't know. Yeah, I'd just have to build off of where I was before. I don't know if I could jump around like that. It'd probably feel like different stories, even though it was the same story for me. Um, but I could be broken as well. Probably am.
oh, we all are in some way. I
Good
feel
old
like the
human condition.
past 10, 20 years, well, however long it's been since
Yeah,
the world
so
started going off the rails.
yeah, long story short, whatever works. Just keep
Yeah,
keep doing it.
yeah, just get to the end.
Exactly. That's the key, just finishing a first draft, that's an accomplishment in of itself. So,
Really, really
yeah,
is. Yeah, like especially like when we have day jobs and we have commitments and we have all these other things that seem to distract us and keep us from being able to sit down. I don't want to blame it
exactly.
all on my children, but
What's half the battle? Like, just it's not even, I mean, I have no kids. I only have a cat, so maybe I'm one to talk. I don't know. Probably
oh
not.
yeah.
But it's like half the time I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna sit down and write for 3 hours today, and then I'll like look up from my phone and an hour has gone by. It's like, oh, good, great use of time, man. So I'm not a great steward of time, but maybe that's a common humanity thing. I don't know.
I mean that is like that's especially when you put the pressure on yourself. Like, okay, here's the time. I got to get in there and I got to do that. It's like it's almost that breaks you, or at least that will
hmm
for me. There because there's times like I've wasted this time. I've wasted this gift of time. And it's like
You're preaching to the
pressure I put
choir.
on myself.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not so great at self-compassion either, so I totally resonate with that. I think it was Victor Laval. Did you ever listen to The Dark Word, Philip Fracasse's podcast a few years ago?
I didn't.
Um, if not, I highly recommend it. He just
Okay.
interviews all these amazing writers on craft and kind of all the inner workings of, just how to make a story and how they go about it. And Victor Laval, I think he was saying he actually gets more done now that I think he has a child now. That was a couple of years ago. But because his time was so minute that he actually really made the most of every second. He actually said he was more productive, if I remember correctly. So it's like having all this leisure time that I have is actually could be working against me, actually.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you don't feel that like pressure of like, okay, I got to get this shit done. Like,
But the
um,
guilt is still there. The
oh
guilt is
yeah,
always.
I blame capitalism. I think I think it broke us. We have to feel the need to be working or productive all the time.
Probably has something to do with it, I would
I blame
imagine.
most of my problems on capitalism, though. It's
I mean, you might be onto something there.
yeah, overthrow the system. Um, uh, oh, sorry, I lost. I had a question. And I lost it.
You're good. I have a fever brain right now, so you're totally fine. I feel like I'm
Um,
underwater, honestly. It's
I like
wild.
yeah. That's my year. I get a yearly sinus infection thing because my allergies are like worse every year. So there's like a good week or two every year where I'm just on death's door.
I think I'm right there. That sounds very yeah, I know what you're going through.
Yeah, it's like I got COVID once and it was still like not as bad as the sinus thing that like I have to look forward to every spring and summer and fall and
Yeah,
winter
I
now because the earth is dying.
I feel you. Me and my friend group kind of all simultaneously got COVID about maybe 2 months ago, and this is like so much worse than that. It's all bad, but like if we're ranking them,
Yeah.
not that I want COVID.
Yeah. It's
Anyways,
just
I digress.
oh, that's one thing I've read about talking about like, the pandemic in that, when the great influenza epidemic 1918 happened, other than a handful of books, like no one talked about it. No one talked about it in the writing. No, anything contemporary of that era just doesn't even mention it. Like it didn't happen. And I find that like, when I read stuff, modern stuff written in the last few years, there's really no mention of COVID. And almost when there is, it's almost jarring. So I just think
Hmm.
that's interesting, like how when it comes to illness, we just want to just shove that under the bed and forget about it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a very Western thing too. Like we it's almost like we do everything we can to not be like conscious that we're going to die one day, whatever that may mean or whatever. Um, we do everything we can to ignore that. So I think when we arrive there, it's going to be so much harder to deal with, unless we could just be conscious of every day. And I don't know, I'm going off on a tangent, but I definitely agree with you. And I think that's kind of a capitalism thing too. It's just like buy this, it'll fill that void. It's like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's almost like, hey, look over here. Like forget about, this being your one beautiful life. I don't know. This could be the fever talking, so forgive me if I'm going a little wild
Yeah.
here, but
No, I mean that
yeah.
that makes sense. And also like, and honestly, with horror writing, I feel like as far as dealing with pandemics and things like that, there's already a lot of like horror tropes. You can go to zombies, you can go to vampires, you can go to anything where there's essentially a contagion. And so like I guess we already have works that essentially deal with that without dealing with it.
Hmm. Yeah, what's the Menzinger's lyric? I think it's life's a terminal illness in remission. I thought that was
Mm,
pretty clever.
yeah. Yeah, it's like nobody, no, we're all counting down. Nobody gets as my 9-year-old said to me on my birthday. You're halfway there because
Oh gosh.
she was like, because I guess
Sheesh.
she looked it up. She was like, 80 is the average, so you're halfway there. It's like, thank
Oh
you.
gosh. It's all
It's
downhill from here. No, man.
like, well, I
What a
guess like
knife.
you're preparing yourselves for the eventual demise of me.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's intense. How old? 9?
9.
Wow, that's kind of incredible.
She just though she does stuff like it's like if I'd written it down in a story, they'd be like, kids don't say things like that. I'm like, yes, they do. Kids are weird. Like she got me this. One second.
Yeah.
She drew me this, and I said, oh, that's very pretty. What is that? She goes, it's a man falling into the abyss. I'm like, where? What is your influence on that? Like, what?
That's incredible. Is she reading like Nietzsche or like Camus when you like turn off her bedroom light or something?
I
She's under there with the flashlight or something.
I don't know. As far as I know, it's just Diary of a Wimpy Kid and Dog Man. But here we are. And
That's incredible.
it says very dark, out of pocket things.
She's gonna be like a philosopher when she grows up, or maybe she already is. I think she already is actually. So good
Yeah,
luck.
there we go. She's preparing me to accept my mortality.
Hey, live in the present moment, There
There
you
we
go.
go.
That's great.
Um, oh, one thing. Um, when you talk about, you've written vampires. Are there any other like, monsters, tropes, things in horror that you've always been like you haven't yet, but you want to explore that or write about that?
Oh, sure. One actually, I'm actually, if you were like, are you a vampire person or a werewolf person? I'm actually 100% a werewolf person. It's just the vampire just happened to be a better vehicle for the story, I guess. So I just went that route. But yeah, there's a down the road. I mean, right now I'm writing. I'm sub I'm querying a consensual possession novel. I'm currently writing kind of more of a Japanese ghost story.
Okay.
But eventually I would love to write even if it's a novelette, like a werewolf long form story. Just I love that creature like so much. As a kid, I would like howl at the moon and stuff, and they didn't put me away, so I'd like to write that story one day.
Yeah. I mean that would be awesome. I want to read John Steinbeck's werewolf book that Like every few years, people remind us that that's there in a trunk somewhere. It's like, just let us read it.
Yeah, the hair on my neck stands on end anytime even someone briefly mentions that it exists. So I'm right there with you.
Because I mean, you're reading stuff like To a God Unknown. It's like, okay, he can do horror. Like he can, like he's
Hmm.
almost on the precipice of it with that book. It's like he could do it. Like I want to read it.
And apparently he has.
Yeah,
How about yourself? Any monsters that I know you're like a big cryptid guy, right?
yeah. I'm actually working on one now. It's like my Bigfoot horror. Like I wrote a book about people that look for Bigfoot, but this one's actually about the monster. And yeah,
Oh,
I've
nice.
wanted to do like I've always wanted to also do like a Texas Chainsaw, that rural backwoods horror. Like I've written one and I wrote it as a play and it never went anywhere. But I've thought about rewriting it, but I'm always drawn to those like 'cause I think I grew up in rural Texas, so it's always like when you have the over the
Okay.
top crazy characters, I'm like, I knew that. I knew people like that. Like,
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I'm sure Virginia's different than Texas, but rural Virginia was fairly interesting as well. So
oh
I
yeah,
can relate a little
absolutely.
bit.
Like that's like rural Virginia and West Virginia is just like cryptid central too. Like people have just seen all kinds of things. Like there's
Yeah,
a lot of
good old
folklore and
Appalachia.
legend.
Good old Appalachia, it's a it's a weird time.
Hmm. Oh man, well, thank you for coming on here again. This was awesome.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's
Appreciate
been
it.
great.
Yeah,
Likewise.
and anybody out here who is looking for something to read, Hunger Pangs is a great collection. Our Own Unique Afflictions, fantastic novel. And if you want an anthology that would just break your heart continuously for like 300 or so pages, what one wouldn't do? Um,
Well, thanks.
yeah,
Well, thanks. And there are still copies of Our Own Unique Affliction available. I don't it's limited because, it's out of print, but you can
yeah,
still find it some places. So I don't know. Good luck. Or I have some if anyone's interested. I have a few copies here as well.
yeah.
Not to shill, but I'm
No,
shilling,
shill
I guess.
away, shill away.
Writers, we're all millionaires, right? No.
Yeah,
But yeah,
like,
thanks for having me, man. This has been great. This has been
of
great.
course. Thank you.